Picture this, a single mother, working as a maid, her hands calloused from years of scrubbing floors in a billionaire's sprawling mansion. She's exhausted, underpaid, and ready to walk away for good. But just as she's about to leave, the billionaire uncovers something she's done, something so unexpected, so profound, it stops him in his tracks. What could a maid, invisible to the world of wealth, do to make a billionaire rethink his entire life? This isn't just a story of rich versus poor, it's a roller coaster of loyalty, hidden pain, and a twist that'll leave you stunned. Buckle up, because you've never heard a story like this before. Hit that play button, and let's unravel the mystery of Maria Alvarez and Victor Grayson. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Hey, everyone! Welcome back to the channel, where we dive into stories that inspire, shock, and remind us what it means to be human. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and join our community of story lovers. We're so glad you're here. Today, we're peeling back the layers of an incredible true story that feels like it was ripped from the pages of a Hollywood script. It's about Maria Alvarez, a maid whose life collided with one of the richest men on the planet, Victor Grayson, in a way that changed them both forever. This isn't just a tale of wealth and power, it's about resilience, empathy, and the kind of courage that can bridge the gap between two very different worlds. Let's set the scene. Maria Alvarez is a 38-year-old single mother living in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment in a bustling coastal city. Her days revolve around her 12-year-old son, Lucas, the light of her life. For the past 5 years, Maria has worked as a maid at the mansion of Victor Grayson, a billionaire tech mogul whose name is synonymous with innovation and ruthlessness. Victor's mansion is a sight to behold. 30,000 square feet of opulence, with marble floors imported from Italy, gold-plated chandeliers that cost more than Maria's annual salary, and a staff of dozens to keep it all pristine. Maria's job? Cleaning every inch of this palace, from the grand ballroom to the private suites, all while meeting Victor's impossibly high standards. Maria's life wasn't easy. She'd wake up at 4 a.m., her alarm cutting through the pre-dawn silence. 2 buses and an hour-long commute later, she'd arrive at the mansion, where she'd work 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer. Her hands were rough from scrubbing, her back ached from bending over, and her bank account barely covered rent, groceries, and Lucas's school supplies. She earned minimum wage, $12 an hour in a city where a cup of coffee cost half that. But Maria was more than her job. She was meticulous, with an eye for detail that made her stand out. She was kind, always offering a smile to her coworkers, even on the toughest days. And above all, she was devoted to Lucas, dreaming of a day when she could afford to send him to college or maybe even start her own cleaning business. Victor Grayson, on the other hand, was a man who seemed to have it all. At 52, he was the CEO of a tech empire that revolutionized artificial intelligence. His net worth? Over $10 billion. His lifestyle? Private jets, a fleet of supercars, and a mansion that made headlines in architectural magazines. But beneath the surface, Victor was a loner. Divorced a decade ago, estranged from his family, and with no children, at least, none that anyone knew about, he lived in a world of his own making. His mansion, for all its grandeur, was a fortress of solitude. When the staff left at night, it was just him, surrounded by silence and the ghosts of his past. Maria noticed this. She saw the way Victor would linger in his office, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city skyline, his face etched with something she couldn't quite place, grief, maybe, or regret. She overheard his sharp tone with employees, his impatience with anyone who dared to get too personal. To Victor, Maria was just another face in the army of staff who kept his life running. She was invisible, a shadow moving through his home. But Maria saw him, and what she saw wasn't just a billionaire, it was a man carrying a burden he wouldn't share. That brings us to the moment everything changed. Maria made a decision, a choice that would set off a chain of events no one could have seen coming. What did she do? And how did it ripple through Victor's world, forcing him to confront truths he'd buried for years. Let's dive into the problem that pushed Maria to the edge, and the secret that changed everything. Maria's life at the mansion wasn't just hard, it was relentless. Day after day, she cleaned rooms that seemed to stretch on forever, polished surfaces that gleamed under Victor's critical eye, and navigated a workplace where mistakes weren't tolerated. She'd mop the grand foyer until it sparkled, dust the intricate crown molding, and scrub the guest bathrooms until they looked unused. All this for a paycheck that barely kept her and Lucas afloat. Her body was paying the price: chronic back pain from hours of bending, hands cracked and dry from cleaning chemicals, and a bone-deep exhaustion that followed her home. Worst of all, she was missing out on Lucas's life. She'd leave before he woke up and come home after he was asleep, their only connection a few hurried texts or a note left on the fridge. Maria tried to stay strong. She'd tell herself it was worth it, that every dollar brought her closer to her dreams for Lucas. But the grind was wearing her down, and Victor's attitude didn't help. He was demanding, often curt, dismissing her work with a wave of his hand or a barked, "Do it again." To him, the staff was a machine, and Maria was just a part. She'd overhear him on calls, negotiating billion-dollar deals with the same cold precision he used to order her to repolish a banister. It stung, but she kept going, until one night pushed her over the edge. It was a Friday evening, and Victor was hosting a gala for his business partners. The mansion was alive with the clink of champagne glasses, the hum of conversation, and the glow of 1,000 candles. Maria and the staff worked tirelessly, serving drinks, clearing plates, and keeping the chaos at bay. By 2 a.m., when the last guest left, Maria was still there, sweeping up confetti and wiping down tables. Her feet ached, her eyes burned, but she kept moving. As she cleaned the dining room, she overheard Victor talking to a guest near the fireplace. His voice carried, sharp and dismissive, "The help here is replaceable. They come and go. Doesn't matter who's holding the mop." Those words landed like a sledgehammer. Replaceable? Maria had given 5 years of her life to this mansion. She'd worked through holidays, missed Lucas's school events, and poured her heart into a job that left her empty. She wasn't just tired, she was humiliated, reduced to nothing in the eyes of a man who had everything. On the bus ride home, as the city lights blurred past, Maria made a decision. She was done. She'd quit the next day, no matter the cost. She couldn't keep pouring herself into a job that made her feel like nothing. The next morning, Maria walked into the mansion with a resignation letter folded in her pocket. Her hands trembled as she passed the grand foyer, the chandeliers glittering above her like a taunt. She'd leave the letter on Victor's desk and slip out before anyone noticed. It was a clean break, or so she thought. But something was about to happen, something tied to a secret she'd been keeping for months. It wasn't theft or deceit, but a small, quiet act that carried a weight she couldn't have imagined. And when Victor discovered it, it would change everything. What was Maria hiding? And how did it tie her to a billionaire in ways she never expected? Let's go back to understand how this moment came to be. To understand what happened next, we need to go back 6 months, to a moment that set this story in motion. Maria was cleaning Victor's private study, a room off limits to most of the staff. It was a sanctuary of sorts, dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a massive desk overlooking the city. Maria was only allowed in once a week, under strict instructions to touch nothing but the surfaces. But one day, while dusting a corner shelf, she found something unexpected: a stack of old photo albums, their leather covers worn and dusty, hidden behind a row of books. Curiosity got the better of her. She glanced around, made sure no one was nearby, and opened one. Inside were photos of a younger Victor, maybe in his 30s, smiling in a way Maria had never seen. He was with a woman, radiant and laughing, and a little girl, no older than 5, with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. They were at a park, a beach, a Christmas tree lighting, moments of joy frozen in time. Maria's heart sank. She knew Victor lived alone, with no family in sight. Who were these people? And why were these albums hidden away like a secret? She closed the album quickly, feeling like she'd crossed a line. But the images stayed with her. Over the next few weeks, Maria noticed more clues. In a desk drawer, she found letters addressed to someone named Emily, written in Victor's precise handwriting but never sent. They were full of apologies, promises, and a longing that felt raw. On a bulletin board, tucked behind a stack of papers, was a child's drawing, a stick-figure family under a bright sun, with "Daddy" scrawled in crayon. Maria pieced it together. Emily was Victor's daughter, and something had torn them apart. As a mother, Maria couldn't shake the thought. She imagined losing Lucas, the pain of not knowing where he was or if he was okay. It was unbearable. So, without telling anyone, Maria started doing something small but deliberate. Every time she cleaned the study, she'd gently dust the albums and place them on a shelf where Victor might see them. She'd move the child's drawing to the top of the bulletin board, hoping it would catch his eye. It wasn't much, just a quiet gesture to remind Victor of what he'd lost, to nudge him toward healing. She didn't expect him to notice, and she certainly didn't expect thanks. It was just something she had to do, a mother's instinct reaching out to a man in pain. But Victor seemed oblivious. He'd storm into the study, engrossed in calls or papers, never glancing at the albums or the drawing. Maria kept at it, week after week, her small act of kindness becoming a ritual. She'd tell herself it was silly, that it didn't matter, but deep down, she hoped it might make a difference. Meanwhile, Maria's life outside the mansion was unraveling. Lucas was struggling at school, acting out because he missed her. Bills were piling up, and her dreams of starting a business felt further away than ever. The gala and Victor's cruel words were the final straw, pushing her to write that resignation letter. She couldn't keep living like this, invisible and undervalued. Fast forward to the morning she planned to quit. Maria moved through the mansion, her heart heavy but resolute. She reached the study, ready to leave her letter and go. But then she heard Victor's voice, sharp and desperate, on the phone. "I don't care what it costs. Find her." The words stopped her cold. She peeked through the door and saw Victor clutching one of the photo albums, his face pale, his hands shaking. The child's drawing was on his desk, right in front of him. What Maria didn't know was that Victor had been searching for Emily for nearly a decade. After a bitter divorce, his ex-wife, Claire, had taken Emily and vanished. Victor's wealth couldn't buy him answers, private investigators had chased dead ends, and every lead fizzled out. But that morning, something clicked. He'd noticed the albums, neatly arranged, and the drawing, placed with care. It wasn't just the objects, it was the intention behind them. Someone had seen his pain, had cared enough to preserve these memories. Maria, unaware of the storm she'd stirred, set her letter on a table and turned to leave. But Victor's voice cut through the silence. "Who's there?" She stepped into the study, her pulse racing. Victor looked at her, his eyes searching her face. "Did you do this?" he asked, holding up the album. Maria nodded, bracing for anger. Instead, Victor's voice softened, almost breaking. "Why?" Maria took a deep breath. She told him everything. How she'd found the albums, the letters, the drawing. How, as a mother, she couldn't ignore his pain. How she'd hoped, in some small way, to help him remember what mattered. She spoke with a quiet strength, her words raw and honest. Victor was silent, his eyes fixed on the album. Then he said, "You've done more for me than anyone in this house. Please, don't go." That moment in the study was a seismic shift. For the first time, Victor saw Maria, not as a maid, but as a person. Her small act of kindness had cracked open something in him, a vulnerability he'd buried under years of wealth and ambition. He didn't just ask her to stay, he opened up, telling her about Emily. The divorce had been ugly, a clash of egos that left Claire determined to cut Victor out of their lives. Emily was only 5 when they left, and Victor hadn't seen her since. He'd spent millions on investigators, but the trail was cold, until Maria's quiet gestures brought those memories back to the surface. Maria listened, her heart aching for him. She stayed, not because of the job, but because she saw a man who needed someone to believe in him. Over the next few weeks, an unlikely bond formed. Maria shared stories about Lucas, his love for soccer, his dream of becoming an engineer. Victor, in turn, opened up about Emily, her laugh, her love for drawing, the way she'd call him Daddy in that sing-song voice. It was the first time he'd spoken her name aloud in years. Maria didn't stop at listening. She became an ally, helping Victor in ways no one else had. She noticed details in the letters, postmarks, phrases, tiny clues, that others had overlooked. One letter mentioned a town called Willow Creek, a place Maria recognized because her cousin lived nearby. She suggested Victor focus the search there, even offering to call her cousin for local insights. Victor, stunned by her initiative, agreed. Days later, the investigator called with news. Emily was in Willow Creek, living with Claire in a modest house. She was 15 now, a teenager with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn streak. Victor was overjoyed, but fear quickly followed. Would Emily want to see him? Would she hate him for the years apart? Maria, ever the voice of reason, sat him down. "You're her father," she said. "She might be angry, she might be hurt, but you have to try. For her, and for you." With Maria's encouragement, Victor reached out to Claire. It was a tense call, full of old wounds, but Claire agreed to let him see Emily. The reunion was far from perfect. Emily was guarded, unsure of the man who'd been a stranger for so long. But it was a start, a fragile thread that Maria's kindness had helped weave. Maria's story is a testament to the power of small acts. She could have walked away, let Victor drown in his isolation, but she chose to care. That choice didn't just change Victor, it changed her, too. Victor didn't just give Maria a raise, he funded Lucas's college education and invested in her dream of starting a cleaning business. Today, Maria runs Alvarez Cleaning Company, a thriving company that employs single mothers, giving them the flexibility and support she once craved. Lucas is on track to attend college, his future bright. Victor, meanwhile, is rebuilding his relationship with Emily. It's slow, there are years of pain to heal, but he's no longer the cold, distant man he was. He's learning to listen, to be present, all because a maid saw his humanity when no one else did. This story isn't about wealth or status. It's about the ripple effect of kindness, how one person's compassion can change lives. Maria wasn't powerful, but she had heart, and that was enough to shift a billionaire's world. If Maria's story touched you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a spark of hope. Subscribe and ring the bell for more stories that inspire. Let's spread kindness together. See you in the next video.